Good evening, everyone. It is 6:33 on April 11th, 2023. This is the time for our regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the Northern Lebanon School District for the month of April. I now call this meeting to order. Director Williams would please lead us in a flag salute.
We could stand for pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Williams. Mrs. Smart, may I please have a roll call?
Yes. Bucks. Here. England. Fowler.
Present.
Williams.
Here.
Murray. Klein.
Present.
Erdman. Marlowe.
Here.
Nom.
Present.
Directors England, Murray, and Erdman absent. All other members are present.
Okay, we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. For the next item on the agenda is the adoption of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate with an aye or a yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item 3. This is presentations for this evening. First, note that the high school students of the month for April are Amanda Aday and Hannah Wanyo. Are either of those two students here today? No. The award is sponsored jointly by the Fredericksburg and Jonestown Lions Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Lions Club. The middle school student of the month for April is Hope Schaefer. Is Hope here? No. This award is sponsored by the Northern Lebanon County Rotary Club, and this recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Rotary Club. Congratulations to those 3 students. Tonight, student board representative Alex, you're here. Great. Alex Selby. Oh, before you proceed, Alex, sorry. I do want to announce that this evening, the board met in executive session for a workshop on fact-finding pertaining to finances. And the board will be meeting after this regular meeting for an executive session briefly to discuss the sale of our properties. Okay, thank you, Alex.
We're just working on Powder Puff right now, which is going to be on the 28th. So see you there.
That's it. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we do have another presentation. Dr. Messinger, would you like to introduce our next speakers?
Sure. We have some potential interest in our, some serious interest in our buildings, East Hanover and Lickdale. And we have some gentlemen joining us from the Gap. They're going to talk a little bit about what their plans are for the buildings. If you guys, we can turn that mic on for you and let you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Ferraro. I'm the Executive Deputy Secretary for the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. I have Mr. Bob Hepner, who is our Deputy for Facilities and Engineering, and Mr. John Visharan, who is our Real Estate Coordinator. So our interest is in the East Hanover property and the Lickdale property. The East Hanover property will be used, when we purchase it, will be used as what we call a readiness center or a National Guard armory. Excuse me. Which means we'll be placing some Army units there. And when they come in for their weekend assemblies or their annual training periods or whatever, all the administration and whatnot would take place there. And then they pick up with their equipment and go to Fort Indian Town Gap or whatever training site they're going to go train at. At this point, the units that will be moving there are actually at Fort Indian Town Gap. It's just that at Fort Indian Town Gap, the facilities that we have were built in 1939 and were built as World War II wooden barracks labeled as temporary, even though they're still standing. Okay. So we want to get them into more modern facilities. And this actually suits the bill for what we're looking for to get them into that facility. So again, that'll be used as an Army National Guard Readiness Center. The Lickdale property we're going to use as an outreach center. So about 2019, when the general legislature legislated the lieutenant governor's house to the department, they mandated that we had to have an outreach center for veterans, family members, and service members. Their proposal was to use the lieutenant governor's house for that, but that posed a couple problems. One, it was a house that was built in 1948, 47. So to bring it up to code and standards is going to cost about $5 million. And really not conducive, because for those that don't know, the gates are going in at Fort Indian Town Gap finally. So it will be a secure installation, and we want to make sure that if we are to have a resource center, it would be accessible for people to get in there without having to go through all the checks and security they have to go through. So we finally got the legislature to change the legislation to say we can use the house for what we want, but we still have to have that outreach center. And that is the intent of the Lickdale School. So we're going to place in there our Army National, or excuse me, our National Guard Education Center for both the Army and Air Force, Air National Guard. We're going to put what we call our DEER section, which is the section that gives out ID cards to military retirees and their dependents. And we're also going to put our what we call Family Member and Services Support Division that provides services to soldiers and their families, financial services, educational services, mental health services, and stuff of that nature to our soldiers and airmen. In addition, we're also going to put some veteran outreach resources there that support the veterans in the area. So we're going to set up a regional veterans outreach center as well. Again, partnering with the federal VA, partnering with veteran service organizations such as the American Legion, the VFW, some nonprofits, and some other state organizations that provide veteran benefits to our veterans, so that we can make sure there's a one-stop shop that they can come to get benefits that they earn for their service. And that would be the intent of the Lickdale School. It's really appropriately located because of the intersection that it's at. It's easily accessible. So that's what we're using the Lickdale School for.
Questions?
Well, you guys are
Really
too easy.
excited.
Quick question, is the outreach center not the veterans part, but is that something that the Gap is currently doing, or is that a whole new service?
No, we actually have that at Fort Indian Town Gap. The Education Center and the Soldiers Services Division is at Fort Indian Town Gap. Again, they're in, as we like to say, dilapidated World War II wood,
Yeah.
which is really just to maintain those types of facilities are just crushing us in maintenance dollars. So
Yeah, having stayed in those barracks for a few
Yes.
weekends, I really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah,
still, yeah.
well,
So again, these are so well suited for what we do, you know, with the large assembly halls, the kitchens that we can use as a mess hall for the drilling soldiers. You know, it just really foots the bill for us. And to us, it's a great opportunity. We get to stay part of the community. We get the soldiers, we actually get to put them back into the community as opposed on an installation, which is the whole premise of the Guard, right? A community-based organization. So it really works well for us.
One thing that the school, their equipment, that footprint, of course, is not big enough for military equipment parking. Their equipment's going to be a 40 town.
Yeah, we're just going to keep it at the Gap.
There, so the unit, because the unit is so close, they can move back and forth. So there's not going to be military. There's not going to be a whole lot of military equipment parked at the east now. That's important.
Yeah, because the road network there really won't handle the type of units that we're putting there are heavy transport units and truck companies. So it's not going to support the road network, and we don't want to do damage to the community and all that. So the majority of their equipment, minus a couple small Humvees and stuff like that, will all stay at the Gap.
I'm sorry, you might have said this, but is that then going to be the place where they'll also reside over the weekend? They'll sleep there, so you'll have to convert some of those classes. No, they'll be
We
staying.
actually do not stay overnight right in the centers.
Okay,
So traditionally, when there's what we call a home station drill, the soldiers go home at the end of the
I see.
day and then they come back the next day. When they go out and train, they'll leave the home station armory, drive to Fort Indian Town Gap, AP Hill in Virginia or in Maryland, or Virginia, Fort Pickett or whatever. And then they'll stay overnight there in the World War II wood barracks that you were talking about. And then they'll come back, stow their equipment and go home. So traditionally, we do not reside unless we were doing some type of emergency type mission in support of PEMA, like a snowstorm, a flood event, or something of that nature. Will the soldiers be staying in the facility?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Excellent report. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You do not have to stay. You're welcome to stay, but you do not have to stay. You're welcome to go. Sneak out if you want. Sure. Want me to do my report?
Well, first.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll move to superintendent's report. Dr. Messinger.
All right, Leanne, you want to get us going?
Sure. I will start with my regular monthly report updates that I give. So the category is monthly expense summary. If you take a look at that, the only thing in March that you can see stands out is that we had 3 payrolls. So that is why the expenses were higher. And we also sent a quarterly payment to Peasers in the all other category, which drove that up to $3 million payment there. As you can see, we've been having some significant healthcare expenses this month. So that continues to be consistent this year, is higher in healthcare than what we had experienced the last 2 prior years. And then a quick budget update. This year for 23-24 budget, we'll be doing a full presentation next month when we're adopting the preliminary budget. Sorry, adopting the first version of the final budget. But the expense and revenues at this point are balanced at $44,944,000. So just under $45 million. We have a balanced budget where expenses equals our revenues, and that's with a 5.1% tax increase. As I had mentioned before, PDE did approve us for a $318,000 exception, which is a 6.5% tax increase. And there is an overall decline in revenue due to the COVID grant monies expiring. That was $2.5 million that we had included in our budget last year, and that will not be there again next year. So that is one adjustment that we have in there. And we have a few expense items that we'll be going over next month with an increased bond payment and a few other areas that we are looking to get some things done. And sorry, one more thing that we did is there's an increase, and we'll be going over this, or decrease for next week, is the consolidation of the elementary schools. We've talked about this many times, and we have done that through attrition over the past few years with personnel. And that is a decrease overall in expenses for us then.
Okay, just to piggyback off of that, the budget was prepared to the index, not the exception. So when you mentioned the exception and the 6.5, that's the exception we were asked to explore. Ms. Martin's going to talk about that at the next meeting, but the budget was not prepared with that exception. Just to be clear about that.
Correct.
As far as other things that are going on, I mean, we spent a lot of time in the budget in the last few weeks. Obviously, we have ongoing construction. Even since being over there a week ago, some flooring is starting to be installed. The model classroom, we'll have the flooring done tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I'll be over there looking at that and making sure that that looks okay, because they'll take that and then they'll put that in all the classrooms. They'll go from there. So the flooring is starting to be installed. It is now fully enclosed as well. And all the doors are on, and they're actually locking it at this point, which means the fencing that's all around the outside will start to come down so that they can start to work on some final grading. You'll notice that on the east end, that is graded and is seeded. So we'll start seeing some grass the next time we get some good rain and the weather stay above freezing. They're also starting to work on paving of the entranceway, as well as the signs that are on the outside. But there'll be some additional blacktop and sidewalking coming down in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So it continues to move, and we continue to be in good shape with electrical panels always hanging in the wings. So from a construction standpoint, that's where we are. One of the other things that wrapped up this month with the new science standards, we began working with the IU on redoing our science curriculum. They met 5 times to go through the entire process and spent a lot of time preparing that. At this point, the curriculum is prepared. The high school, secondary school, high school, middle school intend to start that curriculum next year after board approval. But elementary, we're going to take a year to go over it with them, to train them. With all the changes going on in their lives, we didn't want to throw a new curriculum at them. Particularly because if you think about the curriculum process, when you're redoing a physics class, you're redoing a biology class, you're redoing a chemistry class, you have those teachers involved in the process. So they're getting to see the curriculum and understanding it while they're preparing it. In elementary school, you have a representation of the elementary teachers. So yes, we had a number of teachers there, but there's every single teacher at elementary teaches science in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of them have not seen the curriculum yet. So we're going to take the year as part of our professional development and start to familiarize them with science, take a look at a couple different resources for them, maybe pilot some, so that we'll have full implementation when the state requires it for 2 years from now. And Director Bucks got to join us for a little bit there, and they were doing some good work, I think.
They definitely are. It's a heavy lift, the changes that they're making. I was impressed by the collaboration and the amount of enthusiasm that our teachers showed.
Yeah. Okay. Other than that, we were grateful for the little break and are looking forward to the home stretch here. So that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Dr. Messinger? Okay, great. Thank you for the report. Any old business for this evening? Okay, hearing none, we will move to our public comment portion of this meeting. Per Board Policy 903, all individuals wishing to participate in an open board meeting were asked to register their intent with the board secretary by 3 p.m. today. When speaking, each speaker shall include the name of the participant, topic to be addressed, and group affiliation if applicable. That was provided today by 3 p.m. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if applicable. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 4 minutes duration. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question school directors individually. Understand that we just have one item for public comment this evening, and I also understand that by email to the board this afternoon, that person requested an additional 2 minutes to speak. Given that this is the only public comment for this evening, in accordance with policy, I am permitted to waive the rule on 4 minutes with approval of the board. Is there any objection from the board to waiving the 4-minute requirement tonight? Okay, hearing none, then I will give you 6 minutes. Mrs. Sekelic, you are the one item for public comment this evening. The solicitor will be keeping time. Your time will start as soon as you state your name.
Well, I do want to thank you for that. And I hope in the future, other taxpayers and public input people, when you only have one person here that go over, you consider that being waived for them as well in the future. Rachel Sekelic, 109 Blackberry Lane. I spent years researching the history of this school district, its school boards and former superintendents. I spoke to all types of community members and former board members. I verified my information through as many sources as possible. I spoke to people who had been on this board and in this district before, during, and throughout Bell's tenure. I was trying to understand how so many good people were being used and attacked by those boards for years, and no one had gotten louder to make it stop. A few good people have served on these boards, but they were always the very small minority and often had to choose to stay quiet. Because the corrupt members had learned how to weaponize Christianity and would question your faith for even suggesting a different opinion. They've done it to discredit people who spoke publicly, myself included, former and current board members desperately trying to keep their claws in the powers of these seats. They attacked me for being anti-Christian as an attempt to silence me. It didn't matter that I'm passionate that my children form their own relationship with Christ and Christianity, that we've had 2 sons attend Christian school and one of them still does. Our sons are wonderful young Christians who love Jesus. I dealt with these situations privately. I strongly believe in the separation of church and state. No one had publicly used religion to gain their own personal agenda as a board member. They used that weapon where they could hide their lies easier in private, until you used your tainted Christian lenses last month. I have had some version of a Christian lens used against me since I was a little girl. My grandmother and her close friend were singing at choir practice, and I was repeatedly told to sit still and be quiet. I couldn't. I was 8 and had ADHD. I started playing with the hymns and Bibles, and the tower fell, and everyone was very angry. They made me feel like I had committed the absolute worst sin against Jesus. I was sent to the car where her friend's husband was sitting. He would molest me in the front seat of that car. After he molested me, he made me pray for our sins each time. He pressed my little hands together as I said, "I'm sorry, Jesus. I promise I'll be good. I'll be quiet. I won't sin again." But I couldn't keep quiet, and I would be sent to that car at almost every choir practice. He was an elderly man and a pillar in the church community. This trauma taught me that Satan was in people that never warned me about. He could be in the people sitting beside me at church. This trauma gave me skills to see the evil hidden behind pretend piety. At 13, a traumatic counseling session with the pastor at our church would contribute to my suicide attempt just a few months later. In order to leave the Meadows mental hospital, my family had to agree that I would never be forced into a church against my will again. I didn't blame what was done to me on all Christians. I have always had a good Christian in my life. I've attended many churches of my choosing, but listening to last month's board meeting made me feel forced to attend a corrupt church against my will, triggering my PTSD. In a district where kids are suffering daily, your priority is a play to shelter your children. The real world doesn't shelter vulnerable little kids. We've always been collateral damage for selfish ambitions and what's good for those in positions of privilege. I spoke to many people about Director Hauk being accused of having a coach fired. They couldn't understand how someone who used to be such a good person could do something so awful just so his kid could get more playing time. This is how it happens. An entitled school board members blocked a play so his kids could participate, and another one is trying to kick kids off of our basketball court so his own kids' team could play there instead. I refuse to silently watch my tax dollars create the same cesspool that leads right back to when I first started fighting against the former board's abuses of power. The true time-honored traditions that former board member Rachel England really wanted to hold on to were these seats being used for personal agendas on our dime and at the expense of our children. I'm done watching morally corrupt individuals use religion to silence honest people. These boards have never fought the truth or the facts. They tear down the person speaking. They will turn an entire church community against you with their lies and manipulations, twisting their words with each person they speak to. They guilt you into silence to keep their power, and you have nothing to feel guilty about. These people have turned a blind eye to horrible things being done to great people for decades, just so their kids can start every game, get a lead in the play, first chair, or keep their kids' programs and activities as a priority over prioritizing the kids getting attacked in our buildings. My agenda has always been the same. I want a district where every kid that walks through those doors is treated like a Viking for life, and that they bleed blue and gold. Because if we end up using the skills Stop the Bleed can teach us and triage wounds, it will be too late to see that all of that blood runs the same. No one stopped what happened to this little girl because they were worried about the vision of morality we had to show the world when inside they were ugly. I thank you for opening the door. I've waited for this door to be open for 8 years at a public meeting so that I can come for this next. They are not the saviors of this district, and neither are you. The people in this community are going to be our own saviors.
Thank you for your comments. We will move to item 7. These are the items for board action. It should be noted that public notice was given for this meeting in accordance with Act 84 of 1986. By notice of the president, the following action requires a voice vote. All votes in favor shall be stated with an aye or yes. All votes opposed shall be stated with a nay or no. All members abstaining shall state I abstain when prompted. The votes will be recorded in the minutes as a unanimous roll call vote unless there are any votes in opposition or abstention. If necessary, the president may subsequently call for a roll call vote to be recorded in the minutes. We'll move to item 8. This is the consent agenda consisting of items 8.1 through 8.9.
And typically I would ask you to approve the consent calendar as presented. However, there was some discussion last week about so you're going to help me through this, the substitute rate at 135. and raising the substitute rate for some of our special ed classrooms. And we were discussing whether or not we should bump it even more. And the thought process was they're very difficult classrooms to get to and to buy. Can we move that from 135 to say 140? I mean, at least bump it to 140 and try that. We can always look at it again later, or is that not possible?
Different rate for a different type of position.
No, well, yes, but I'm asking about the change to what's written. If not, we'll just bring it up next month.
Yeah, 8.8B.
Yeah, so in other words, if you're in an emotional support classroom as a substitute,
You can vote to change that. Now you just need a board motion to amend the agenda. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for people to provide public comment on that issue. Number.
right, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to do that, we would need a motion to change that from 135 to 140.
Is there a motion to do so?
I move to change the substitute daily rate from 135 to 140 for specialized classrooms K through 12, autistic support, emotional support, and life skills.
Thank you, Director Bucks. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor
Yeah.
to revise
Yeah.
the agenda.
Is there any discussion on that revision? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of making that revision, please indicate with an aye or yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion to amend the agenda carries. And then we'll just move on to the consent agenda then. Do you have something
So
more?
now I'm asking to approve the consent calendar with that one change.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Oh, Dave got that one. Okay, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended, please indicate with an aye or a yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We'll move to the discussion agenda.
A few other items for you that we didn't talk about at committee. One is as you know, finding custodians has been difficult. We've utilized a service from time to time, but they're having trouble finding custodians. There's an additional service that we came across that is helping out with some other school districts in the area. They believe they have a few custodians that they would have available to us. So we are asking for an agreement with Ames Custodial Services to be able to utilize custodians. And again, I'll reiterate that this is when we are short custodians. We prefer to hire our own, but when we are short custodians. I will also say that the Stockton leader is working with us to finalize a few of the agreement terms, but once the solicitor has approved that, then we're asking for a motion to approve the ability to use the Ames for those custodial services. We had one resignation of a library and technology assistant effective 4/14. I want to thank Whitney. This was someone who had agreed to help us out as we looked for some to the new building. This would be a position that we wouldn't have carried over. And she knew that, but she helped us out for a long period of time here to get us through, and we'll finish the year without her, but appreciate her helping until we get close to the end of the school year here. The Fredericksburg ATP is looking to use some of their funds that they have available to them to purchase some library books for the new library. And the list of those books is listed there for you. And then finally, on the other side, we have a resolution for I'm sorry, I went to the wrong page. Yep. The coaches list. There is we have a volunteer baseball coach who has difficulty getting to away games. So we added a volunteer there to help with that so that we have a first base coach and a third base coach. It's a volunteer position for the remainder of the year. That's it.
Any questions on items 9.1 through 9.4 for Dr. Messinger? Okay.
A question, but just yay for the buying of the books by the Fredericksburg APT.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt items 9.1 through 9.4?
Motion to adopt. Motion to adopt 9.1 through 9.4.
Okay, is there a second? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're going to vote on all of these then together. All in favor of approving items 9.1 through 9.4, please indicate with a yes or an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 10, information.
Yeah, this is just the presentation that Mrs. Bruce did last week about the onboarding. We attached it there for both for the public, really. You guys had received a copy, but for the public, in case they're interested in seeing the onboarding program that we've developed.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. It was a good presentation. It's nice to have it available as well. Any questions regarding information? Okay, we'll move on to the reports. First is the change order committee. Director Bucks.
The change order committee did not meet yesterday, but we did meet March 27th. And thank you to Brad for getting me some of these details that I've forgotten. There were 4 change orders on March 27th. They were a little more substantial than we had in the past, and they totaled about 27,000. Some switching out of plywood for gypsum board, some additional pavement markings, shut-off valves, but all justified by Fidavia and going through the standard process.
Great. Any questions? Thank you for your report. We'll move to CTC. Director Klein.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have my notes with me. I will have a report for you next month.
Okay, we'll table that for next month. In IU13, Director Murray is not here. So we'll move to legislative liaison, which is Director England, but he's also not here. We do have PSBA Legislative Day coming up. Is that correct? Director Bucks will just move into the PSBA as well since they're connected.
Advocacy Day is Tuesday, April 18th. I did get an email that, and as always for Advocacy Day, they set up meetings with our local legislators. And there's a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April 18th at 1 p.m. This would occur on Zoom with Senator Gebhard. I am teaching at that time. I'm not able to be there this year, but if anybody is interested, I can get you connected. Gary, I think you were on, and Barry, that email as well.
Yes.
But if anybody else on the board would like to attend that meeting, just let me know and I'll get you the information.
Thank you. I intend to participate in that. Thank you very much. And that's it for the reports. Is there any new business? Okay, hearing none. The dates to remember that you have on your agenda. Just note, next meeting is May 2nd for our committee meeting. And then we have our regular scheduled school board meeting on the 9th. Before we adjourn, I just want to note again that the board will be meeting in a brief executive session immediately following this meeting. Specifically, and I need to clarify, to seek legal counsel on the sale of our current elementary properties. So that will occur immediately after this. Is there anything else for the good of the board? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor, please indicate with an aye or yes. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.